All right, 3.1b, factoring day 2. So we're going to want to factor all quadratic expressions, so including a equals 1 and when a does not equal 1. And then we're going to solve tomorrow, so not solving today. Okay, so remember that factoring is the reverse of multiplication. So sometimes we have just a multiply like 5x times 3x minus 7. So if we multiply that through, we would get 15. X times x is x squared. 5x times negative 7 is negative 35x. So if you wanted to reverse and factor that term, so you have 15x squared minus 35x, you're looking, what do they have in common? They have, you can divide them both by a 5 and you can divide them both by an x. So when you are factoring that common factor, that's called our greatest common factor. That's the largest coefficient or largest term each is divisible by. So when you factor, you take that term that you can divide both by and you put it out in front. And then you divide both terms, so 15x squared divided by 5x, that's going to reduce to 3x. And then 35x divided by 5x is going to reduce to 7. And so that's how you go in reverse. You find what both are divisible by, and then that goes out in front. And then when you divide, you put what's left over in the parentheses. And we talked about the reverse, how these two go together. You multiply this out with FOIL, and then you can factor it again going backwards. So those are reversed. So let's practice finding the greatest common factor and factoring that out, and then factoring any more. All right, so 4, 2, and 6 are all divisible by 2, so I could start with that, and then we have an x cubed, an x, and an x. So I can take out an x from at least each. I can't take out anything bigger than the x because the last term only has a single x. So the biggest I could take out is a 2x. So the 2x is going to go out in front, and then divide each term by 2x. So 4x cubed divided by 2x cubed would be 2x squared. So there was 3, I took away a 1, there's 2 left. Minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, then x squared divided by x, there's 2, I'm taking out 1, there's 1 left. Then negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, there's 1 x, I took it out, there's no x's left. So then that would be that problem. So we would want to check to see if that factors more, but I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So in this one, I can divide them both by 3. So the 3 goes out in front. I can't take out any x's this time because the 12 doesn't have an x. So if I take the 3 and I divide it here, I'm going to be left with an x squared, and then negative 12 divided by 3, I'm going to be left with a minus 4. I do notice that this is one of those perfect square, difference of perfect squares that we talked about yesterday, because it's x squared and 4 are different perfect squares, and you're subtracting. So x squared is x times x, and then negative multiplies to negative 4 but adds up to 0 in the middle would be that positive 2 and then negative 2. So this one does factor one more time for sure. All right, to factor when a is not equal to 1. You can do guess and check, but I like to use the box method. I'm going to show you both. So I'm going to do guess and check first. All right, guess and check. So you need a 2x squared, so the only way to get that is going to be 2x times x. You need the n to equal negative 6. So to get negative 6, you can either have a negative 1 times a 6, a negative 2 times a 3, you can have a negative 3 times a 2, or you can have a negative 6 times a 1. And you need to make it add up to negative 11 in the middle. So if you can use any of these combinations, you just kind of have to think ahead and say, I'm going to be multiplying the 2 times this spot and the 1 times this spot. So how am I going to make 11 using these numbers? Well, I could do 2 times 6 and minus 1. 2 times 6 would be 12. 12 minus 1 would be 11. I need it to be negative 11 though, so I think I'm going to use this combination of negative 6. And the 2 is going to go with the negative 6 because 2x times negative 6 is going to be negative 12x. And then x times 1 is going to be 1x, and then that'll add up to negative 11x in the middle. And then on the end, I still get negative 6x. So that's the answer. It's 2x plus 1 and x minus 6. 2x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 6. So it was really just guessing and double checking and using the fact that I knew there was only one way to get 2x squared, 2x times x, and then using my combinations to make negative 6 to figure it out. There's really no like set like, okay, you do this every time. So guessing and checking can be really hard, especially if you're a student that prefers to have like, here are the steps to solve this problem. So the box method has specific steps you can solve. So first, in the box method, you need to draw a box. Step 1, make it 2 by 2 box. You put your first term, 2x squared, right here, and you put your last term in the last spot. And then you find factors of a times c. So you take these two numbers and you multiply them together. So in this case, it would be 2 times 6, so you'd have 12. And you find factors of 12. So like 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, etc. And you want factors of 12 that are going to add up to your b. So adds up to 7. So you need it to add up to b. Those are the numbers that are going to go here because your middle term adds up to 7x. You can put them in either order. So 3x and 4x. You want your middle to equal 7x. So now my box contains this quadratic equation. It's just broken apart. It has a 2x squared, it has the 7x, and it has the 6. Now I'm going to factor by finding the greatest common factor of each term, each row or column. So like 2x squared and 3x, I can divide both of these just by an x. So I would take out just an x for that row. If I look at this column right here, 2x squared and 4x, I can divide both of those by 2 and an x. So 2x goes there. And 2x times x is 2x squared. You look at this column right here, you can divide 3x and 6 both by 3. Or you could say x times what is 3x, so x times 3 is 3x. 2x times 2 would be 4x. Or looking at this row, you can divide 4x and 6 both by 2. So then your answers, you pull this from your box. Your top factor is this, 2x plus 3, 2x plus 3. And the bottom one is just x and positive 2, so x plus 2. So there's your factors. I like the box too because it's already been multiplied back out for you, so you can check your work. You know, 2x plus 3 and x plus 2, you have it right here. 2x times x is 2x squared, 2x times x times 3 is 3x, 2x times 2 is 4x, 2 times 3 is 6, and this equals what I started with if I multiply it back out. So I very prefer this method, and that's the method that I'm going to be because it has a specific rules and a process that you can follow. So I find students are more successful. But if you're really good about thinking about numbers and factors, then guess and check might be a great method for you to try too. I encourage you to try both and see what works best for you. Okay, so I'm gonna do it with the box though. So draw my box, put my first and last term in there, so 2x squared and negative 15. Then multiply those terms together to get negative 30. Then factors of negative 30, so numbers that multiply to negative 30, and I'm looking for it to add up in the middle to positive 7x. So that means I'm going to have one positive factor and one negative factor, and then they're going to add up to positive 7. So like negative 1 and 30 or negative 30 and 1 really isn't necessary to list because I know I can't make 7 with that. But how about negative 2 and 15? I can't make 7 with that. Negative 3 and 10, I can make 7 with that. So negative 3x and positive 10x is what I want to make positive 7. Then filling out the outside of the box. So the 2x squared and the negative 3x, they just have an x in common. One thing to mention is your first two in your factors will always be positive. So don't take out a negative with those. Then 2x squared and 10x, this row or this column here, they have a 2 and an x together. And then this second column, 3x and negative 15, negative 3 and negative 15, they can both be divided by negative 3. Since I didn't take the negative out with the x, I need to take it out with the 3. So that when I multiply x times negative 3, I get negative 3x. Then 2x times 5 is 10x. So then my factors here would be 2x minus 3 and then x plus 5. So I'm just reversing the multiplication. So if you use the box to multiply, then using the box to factor makes a lot of sense because it's the reverse, and you can check your answer as well. All right, one more. All right, so put the first term, 6x squared here, and the last term here. Then multiply the first and the last term together. So 6 times 2 is 12, and then you're finding factors of 12 that add up to our middle term, which is 7x. So I know multiplies to 12 and adds up to 7 is 3 and 4. You can put that in any order. You can put the 3 here and the 4 here, or vice versa. The key is to just not find the outside of the box until you have the full inside figured out. Then greatest common factor of this first row here, I can divide 6 and 4 both by 2, and I can divide them both by an x. Then the first column, 6 and 3, I can divide both by 3 and an x. And 2x times 3x equals 6x squared, so I'm good. Then the second row or column, they can both be divided by a 2. And the last row can both be divided by just 1. 2 and 3 have nothing else in common. Does that work? 3x times 1 is 3x. 2 times 1 is 2. 2x times 2 is 4x. It works. So my factors are 3x and positive 2. So 3x plus 2 times 2x and positive 1. So 2x plus 1. All right. I'm going to do one more at least here in this section. Let's see, we'll do this one for the video anyway. All right, first and last, 10x squared and 6. Multiply 10 times 6 is 60. And then I wanted to add up to negative 19 this time, which means both my factors of 60 have to be negative because I want to multiply to positive at the end, but add up to a negative in the middle. So I'm going to look for factors of 60 that are both negative, that add up to negative 19. So again, negative 1 and 60 really isn't necessary to list, but negative 2 and negative 30, negative 3 and negative 20, negative 4 and negative 15, that makes negative 19. So negative 4x and negative 19, or negative 15x make negative 19x, and negative 4 times negative 15 adds up to 60, or multiplies to 60, The first row, 10 and 4 are both divisible by 2, and then an x, and then 15 and 10, the first column, they're both divisible by 5 and an x, and 2x times 5x is 10x. And then the second column up and down, they are both divisible by 2. Notice I have a negative 4 here, and I have a positive 2, so I'm going to have a negative 2. So that 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And then 5, these two in this bottom row are both divisible by 3. Again, you're going to need a negative 3 because you have a positive 5x times a negative 3. And then negative 3 times negative 2 is 6. So this one will be 5x minus 2 times the quantity of 2x minus 3. All right, so sometimes before you factor, you have to, and this should be the first thing you look for always, is to check for a GCF. So look to see if you can factor anything out. So, and we should be checking for that every time before we start. So 6, 15, and 9 are all divisible by 3. And then notice, so we have an x cubed, an x, and an x squared, so I can take out an x. If I divide that out, it's going to go out in front of my parentheses. That's going to leave me with a 2x squared for my first term, minus a 5x, and then minus a 3. So then I'm going to see if I can factor this any further. Can I go further? So for the inside piece, I'm going to use the box. I got a 2x squared here and a minus 3. Multiply the 2 and the negative 3 to make negative 6. And I have to get negative 5x in the middle. Multiplies to negative 6 but adds up to negative 5 would be like positive 1 and negative 6. So like 1x and negative 6x. So figuring out the outside, 2x squared and x just have an x in common. 2x squared and a 6x have a 2x in common. So 2x times x is x squared. Then x times 1 is 1x. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. So we get 2x plus 1 and x minus 3. So factoring is a bit of a puzzle. It is kind of a puzzle, a way to figure it out. So this is called the box method of factoring. You could also look up the AC split method, is very similar. There's factor by AC split, uses factor by grouping, guess and check. And I have a few of these videos recorded on my YouTube channel, or there's a bunch of other teachers out there that have done factoring videos. So if you want to look up a factoring quadratic video and get some other ideas if this isn't making sense, that's completely fine.